Welcome back, everybody. This is part 2 of CIOs and Bowties on Friday, the 16th of August, as we're going into a nice weekend. Very hot here in Atlanta. I mean, in the triple digits, and again, that dovetails, I guess, somewhat nicely with our discussion here, and that is around water, investing in and why there's a bull case, if you will, for water. Going back to the article which we cited earlier, you brought up the treatment of water. And it's not so much the treatment as in desalination, but another important problem with water is that most wastewater goes untreated. This is kind of frightening, but people usually don't think too much about what happens to water after it goes down the drain. The fact is only a small fraction of US municipalities recycle their water. The question is, if just 1% of 1/10 of America's wastewater is treated, how much is treated outside of America? So very little. So in other words, you've got this dirty water actually just flowing back into the water systems and being untreated, and that is, rife for diseases and whatnot to grow and fester.
Indeed. There's also a dichotomy in this. I stated at the outset of this in part 1 that these are two individuals that are not very informed on this subject. It was just so interesting that we thought we'd bring it to you in any event. With that being said, there's this amazing dichotomy in that global warming, sadly, is causing oceans to rise. Ice to melt at the poles, oceans to rise, water to rise, i.e. more water. And yet we have water shortages in terms of the human beings or the planet and its need for water. That is a conflict which clearly the science makes sense, but it's a paradox indeed. Absolutely.
Actually, speaking about that, I was doing some research for us here and picked up something quite interesting, and that is, I guess there's a lot of science behind it, and I am no scientist, but essentially with these ice caps melting, the fresh water doesn't allow, doesn't allow the cool water to go down in the ocean as it did before, and it does something to the actual water channels, which is what creates a higher temperature somehow or another. So that's, it's got to do with, I guess, the temperature you can hold salt water versus fresh water. But again, not a scientist. We'll get onto the investment aspect now, but this is actually quite fascinating. I think this is probably the last point I'll cite from here. It says diarrhea kills one child in every 20 seconds.
No,
a lack of clean drinking water is a severe problem, but thirst is hardly the common cause of demise. Waterborne diseases are by far the most lethal killers on the planet. And illnesses like diarrhea, cholera, malaria, and typhoid result in literally millions of deaths per year, with 1.6 million of them being children. And again, it cites sanitation, it cites, when water it doesn't flow anywhere. When it stagnates, it becomes a breeding ground for insects, mosquitoes, malaria, etc. So I think a lot of the water problems, opportunities, is really on the infrastructure side of sanitation.
And clearly drinking dirty water does no one any good at all and can cause diseases in and of itself.
Absolutely, right. So let's talk quickly about the investment side of things. We were having a look a little earlier at an ETF. It's a great proxy for water. And so maybe talk about water in the context of an overall investment theme, ESG, etc.
So it hasn't been one that we've utilized in the past at all, to be honest with you. There are opportunities now with the advent of the ETF wrapper and other products whereby you do indeed have the opportunity, if you wish, to invest in either broad-based ESG products, economically, socially, and governance-friendly securities, or just water in and of itself, which Greg will give some detail to now. Certainly, we have more and more interest from our client base with regard to more ESG investing, and this demise of water as a resource, or this gradual depletion of water as a resource, is a real worry, and that certainly fits into that category of investing without a question of doubt.
Okay, so let's end off then quickly, if I may, on PHO. This one was just selected at absolute total random, the Invesco Water Resources ETF. Again, this is not a recommendation, do your own due diligence, but just as as some information for everyone on the theme. Was it actually with ESG? The question is, yes, you're supporting something from a social governance point of view, and that's totally legitimate. But is there actually an investment
thesis that makes sense?
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
It seems in the case of PHO, there is. Year to date, the ETF is up 24.8%, 1 year 12.67, 3 year 13.31. So definitely, I would think probably at the higher end of overall stock market returns, regardless of the industry. And the makeup. So this I found quite interesting as well. The makeup, as you would imagine, is typically utilities and industrial companies. So the industrials are the Danaher's of the world, which is a big holding here. A.O. Smith is another one, and then you've got the utilities. So there's a lot impacting utilities with interest rates coming down. So there's that element, and industrials are very capital intensive, and growth slowdowns impacting them. So it's hard to say how you isolate water as a theme, but that's what they've certainly done on the ETF side.
And needless to say, it's a theme that affects everybody in all 4 corners, all 27 corners of the earth, of the planet, and something which we're going to hear more about in the future. And hopefully, as inhabitants of this planet, we become better, more friendly, more eco-friendly, and a whole lot more effective at utilizing our water resources than we have been in the past. Do not take water for granted.
Great. Thanks very much, everyone. Thanks for tuning in. And all the best, and let us know if there's any other themes that you'd like us to tackle, the heavyweight CIO and bow tie.
Have a great weekend. Bye.
Bye-bye.